Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! It all started with a former friend of mine named Gary, who is related to someone that got cancer. Now, don't get me wrong, cancer is a terrible thing and I sympathize with anyone going through it. But what happened next was nothing short of a nightmare. So Gary, being the self-appointed spokesperson for his family's member's illness, decided that the best way to show support was to get our entire friend group to shave their heads. Now, I'm all for showing solidarity, but this was a step too far. Gary got a few of our friends to agree, and he was so convinced that I'd join in that he brought his shaving kit to my apartment without even asking. Let me tell you, he was already unboxing that thing before I had a chance to say a word. I looked at him and said, "Gary, this shaving thing is not happening, man." But Gary, stubborn as ever, decided to make an example out of me. One fateful night, I was at a friend's party enjoying a few drinks and having a good time. I got so hammered that I was basically dead to the world. That's when Gary, the sneaky guy he is, seized the opportunity. He waited until I was passed out and completely vulnerable. Then he went ahead and started shaving my head. I was oblivious to what was happening until a friend of mine shook me awake. "What the heck is going on?" I mumbled, still half asleep. My friend pointed at Gary, who was laughing his butt off and holding a chunk of my hair like it was some sort of trophy. He hadn't just shaved my head, he had also taken off one of my eyebrows and left my hair in an irreparable mess. I was livid. So there was no turning back. The rest of my hair had to come off. I was left looking like a bald patchwork quilt thanks to Gary's little stunt. I decided that enough was enough, and I pressed charges against him for assault. Little did I know there was more to the story than met the eye. During the investigation, it came to light that Gary had been on medication for a mental disorder for years. What was even more concerning was that he had stopped taking his meds, which explained his erratic behavior. However, his tune quickly changed when the police arrested him, and he realized that what he had done clearly qualified as assault. But here is where things take a turn for the worse. Gary's family, especially his mother, decided to harass me relentlessly in an attempt to make me drop the charges. I mean, these people just couldn't accept that their precious Gary had done something so wrong. I was not about to back down, so not only did I refuse to drop the charges, but I also reported the harassment to the police. You'd think that would put an end to it, right? Well, not in my case. The harassment only escalated and it got worse, mainly because of Gary's mother, whom I could see where he got his charming personality from. She showed up at my apartment a couple of weeks after the shaving incident. And let me tell you, she wasn't there for a friendly chat. She started screaming at me saying, "You know nothing about what we're going through. It's just a little hair. It's not a big deal." I wasn't about to back down either. I retorted, "My hair is a big deal to me." And what Gary did was inexcusable. And that's when she lost it. I got slapped in the face, followed by a swift kick to the nuts, and then a few more kicks to my body after I went down. Lucky for me, I had a security camera watching the front door because my landlord wouldn't allow a Ring doorbell cam. One of my neighbors witnessed the whole ordeal and screamed at her that they were calling the police. Gary's mom, realizing she was about to get herself into serious trouble, ran off, leaving me battered and bruised. I had to go to the hospital with minor injuries, including bruises, a black eye, and a sore groin. It was a painful reminder that entitled people stop at nothing to get their way, even if it means resorting to violence. Gary's mother was eventually arrested and I filed a lawsuit against her for her brutal assault on me. I had to appear in court twice, once for her assault on me and again for the lawsuits I filed against her. It turned out that this woman had taken several self-defense classes over the years, which made the judge consider her a trained individual. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, given 2 years of probation, and she was ordered to pay my medical bills. Of course, she cried in front of the judge, especially about the money, but he wasn't having any of it. She had the money to cover both court cases, but she still complained about paying anything to the man who she believed had ruined her and her son's lives. Now, around this time, I heard that Gary's relative with cancer had passed away. I didn't know any details, just that they had passed on. I admit that it was sad, but I never knew this person personally. It was clear that Gary had made their condition his hill to die on when he tried to make an example out of me. As a result, Gary got probation and community service for what he did to my hair, and he cut off contact with our entire friend group. Eventually, he moved away, and to be honest, I didn't care where he went. As for my hair, well, it grew back just fine. It took nearly half a year to get it back to how it was, but I got there eventually. My boss had me stay out of the spotlight for a while, and I wore a hat everywhere I went for at least a month. But you know what? I took the $10,000 I got from the lawsuit and combined it with my savings to make a down payment on a house. So I've since moved into a much better place. I was 7 months pregnant when it all went down. I took a ride to the grocery store trying to gather all the items on my list. I was tired and hungry, and all I wanted was to make this trip as short as possible. Go home and get rest. As I was walking through the crowded parking lot, I spotted a car backing out of a spot up ahead. I hurried over and was relieved to see that it was finally my turn to park. As I was maneuvering my car into the spot, I heard a voice shouting behind me. I turned to see a woman storming towards me, a look of anger on her face. "What do you think you're doing, taking this spot?" The woman yelled. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize someone was waiting for it," I replied, trying to stay calm. "You're lying," Karen spat out. "I saw you waiting here for ages trying to steal my spot." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Me? Here? For ages? "I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to cause any trouble. I'm just trying to park my car and go to the store." But Karen wasn't listening. She was fuming with anger. "You're always taking things that don't belong to you, just because you think you're entitled to them. Well, you're not entitled to this spot, and you're not entitled to walk all over me." I was starting to feel scared. She's talking to me as if we've known each other for ages. I never saw this woman before in my life. I was pregnant and alone, and this woman seemed to be getting more and more aggressive. I tried to back away, but Karen followed me, continuing to shout and curse. "Please stop yelling at me," I begged. "I'm sorry if I did something wrong, but I didn't mean to. Can we just go our separate ways and forget about this?" But Karen wasn't interested in making peace. She was too wrapped up in her own anger and entitlement. With a loud growl, she lunged at me and pushed me to the ground. I fell hard, landing awkwardly on my side. I cried out in pain as I felt a sharp jolt in my back. Karen didn't even stop to check if I was okay. She just stormed off into the store, leaving me lying there alone and terrified. A group of people rushed over to help me, and one of them called the police. As I waited for the ambulance to arrive, I couldn't stop shaking. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had done nothing to deserve this treatment, and yet I had been attacked by a complete stranger just because I had dared to park in a spot that Karen felt entitled to. By the way, she was nowhere near the spot when I spotted it. She was completely lying. When the police arrived, I told them what had happened. The cops went inside the store and Karen was arrested and charged with assault. As I was being treated at the hospital for my injuries, I couldn't stop thinking about Karen and the anger and entitlement that had driven her to commit such a violent act. After Karen was arrested and charged with assault for pushing me, a pregnant woman, to the ground, she faced a grave penalty for her actions. The incident had been witnessed by several people and there was clear evidence against Karen. She was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The judge was harsh in his punishment, recognizing the gravity of Karen's crime. Not only had she attacked a pregnant woman, but she had also shown no remorse for her actions. Karen's entitlement and anger had led her to commit a violent, unacceptable act, and the judge wanted to send a strong message that such behavior would not be tolerated. Karen's sentence was several years in prison, and she was also required to complete anger management classes and community service upon her release. It was a harsh punishment in my opinion, but one that Karen deserved. Thank God I was okay, the baby was okay, and nothing bad happened to any of us. I was around 6 years old, give or take a year, and my friend and I were enjoying a hot summer day in my backyard. We had set up our inflatable pool and the sun was shining brightly overhead. It was a perfect day for a pool party, or so we thought. My friend, let's call her F, and I were splashing around in the pool playing a game of Marco Polo. We were having a blast, laughing and enjoying the simple pleasures of childhood. Little did we know that our day of fun was about to take an unexpected turn. Out of nowhere, a woman, who we would later come to know as the entitled person, stormed onto our property. At first, we didn't even notice her, but then she started yelling at us. "I can hear you from all the way across the field. If you don't quiet down, I'm going to call the police." My friend and I exchanged puzzled looks. We weren't being particularly loud, and besides, our property was enclosed and not easily visible from the so-called field, which was really just a large open space covered in grass. Feeling a bit defiant, I did something I now regret. I gave the entitled person the middle finger. I'm not sure why I did it, but it certainly didn't help the situation. In fact, it made things worse. The entitled person didn't take kindly to my gesture. She attempted to march over to our pool, seemingly intent on confronting us directly. However, she had to trudge through damp grass and mud to get to our backyard, and she couldn't reach us. Instead, she turned and ran off, crying like a baby. We thought that was the end of it, but little did we know that the entitled person had a surprise in store for us. Shortly after her dramatic exit, the police showed up at our house. Apparently, someone had called 911, claiming that the two kids were chasing a lady around, yelling at her and assaulting her. One of the officers, a genuinely nice cop, began questioning us. He says, "We had a call stating two kids were chasing a lady around, yelling at her and verbally assaulting her." My friend immediately jumped in to set the record straight. That isn't true. We were in the pool when some lady came and told us to be quiet or she would call the cops. But it's private property and she was trespassing on it. We weren't even being loud. Thankfully, we had surveillance cameras set up and they had captured everything. The footage showed the timestamp of when the entitled person had entered our property, and it clearly showed her coming through the green belt to yell at us. The police officer decided to pay the entitled person a visit and get her side of the story. As it turned out, she had called 911 and made a false report. The officer issued her a fine for the false 911 call and warned her about attempting to hit me. But that wasn't the end of it. My grandmother, who owned a house at the time, was asked if she wanted to press charges against the entitled person for trespassing on our property and destroying her flowers. My grandmother said yes and expressed her desire for the entitled person to stay far away from our house. And the woman didn't take this well at all. She said, "But my dog likes this spot." The second nice cop was having none of it. He told her, "That doesn't matter. If you return here, we will take bigger actions." It turned out that the entitled person lived on the other side of the green belt and had apparently seen us playing in our backyard. She wanted to start trouble for reasons known only to her. In the end, justice was served, and the entitled person learned a lesson and we continued to enjoy our pool parties. But we always kept an eye out for any potential entitled neighbors looking to rain on our parades. Up until last week, I, 26 female, was living with my partner, Tim, 32. A month ago, I traveled abroad with my family. When I returned home, I was exhausted. My iPad was dead and I urgently needed to deal with a work-related issue, but my charger was lost inside the suitcase I'd taken to the trip, and since I was exhausted and in a hurry, I asked him if I could use his charger. He said yes, and I used the charger and then put it back in the box where he keeps it. 2 weeks later, I decided to sell my iPad because I needed some extra cash. A week after that, I came home after buying groceries and found Tim very upset. He'd been looking for his iPad charger, he said, but he couldn't find it. I said I hadn't seen it since I bought it after my trip. He said he was sure I'd lost my charger during the trip and I'd taken his charger to sell it along with my iPad so that I could charge the buyer for the whole iPad charger bundle. I told him that it was awful of him to accuse me of stealing, but he insisted. I've been offered to go to the nearby Apple store to buy him a new charger so that he didn't have to look for the lost one anymore. He responded that he didn't want a new charger but the one he already had. And then he said, "You stole my charger from me in order to sell it, and now you have to confess and pay for what you have done." At that point, he was properly furious, red-faced and yelling. So I said, "Look, I don't know what got into you, but I'm giving you an hour to calm down and apologize for accusing me of theft. If you don't, I'm going to pack and leave this very evening because being falsely accused of theft is not something I'll tolerate." I went to the kitchen to make some dinner and he followed me and continued yelling and accusing me of stealing his charger. An hour later I said, "I warned you." I packed whilst he yelled at me like an absolute madman, and I left as soon as I was done packing. Since then, Tim has been messaging me. What he's telling me is very confusing. He sounds calmer now and says that the stealing accusation was never literal, that he only ever meant to ask me for help to look for his charger, but because he was under a lot of pressure from work, he asked for help in a rather desperate manner. He also says that thief is a word that can be used completely playfully in his country, Sweden. So you can unproblematically call your partner a thief. Yeah. And he said that he's concerned about me, that I reacted in a very impulsive manner to the charger issue, that it's not normal for a mentally healthy person to back and leave their partner abruptly like I did, and that he believes that I might have borderline personality disorder. I feel that all these things he's saying just because he's trying to manipulate me into getting back with him. But at times I worry that I was indeed unduly impulsive, and that a long-term relationship shouldn't be ended after only a 1-hour conflict. I feel torn here. Am I the jerk? And now some comments on the post. You're not the jerk. Sounds like he found his charger, doesn't want to admit it, and might be trying to be old, but in my culture, lie to get you back now. Don't fall for it. You were smart to give him a warning and to follow through. If he had bothered to apologize, then maybe. But no, he compounded his jerkiness, and you did well getting rid of him. Time to block. Another person says, "You're not the jerk. You stole my charger from me in order to sell it, and now you have to confess and pay for what you've done." He also says that thief is a word that can be used completely playfully in his country, so you can unproblematically call your partner a thief. Well, he might be lying and trying to manipulate you. You dodged the bullet. A third commenter goes with, "Not the jerk. He literally said, and multiple times at that, you stole my charger and sold it. Honestly, you're better off without him."
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.